grew up in a small town in rural Pennsylvania, the kind of town where everybody knows everybody, where the main road has 2 gas stations and a diner that closes at 8, and where the woods behind the neighborhood are just a part of life. We called them the backwoods. Kids played in there all the time. There were trails we knew by heart. The muddy one that curved near the creek, the steep one that went up toward the ridge, the flat one that looped around and brought you back to the edge of the neighborhood in about 20 minutes. We knew those woods like we knew our own backyards. I was 17 that summer. My friends and I had stopped going in as much. We had cars now. We had other things to do. But one evening in late July, I decided to go in alone, just to walk, just to clear my head. It was the kind of evening where the heat was finally breaking, and there was that thick golden light that makes everything look like an old photograph. I went in through the usual entrance, a gap between 2 oak trees, where the grass was worn flat from years of kids cutting through. I had my phone, a water bottle, my earbuds. I wasn't planning to go deep, just a loop. 20 minutes, back before dark. I started on the flat trail and felt that immediate sense of calm that the woods always gave. The temperature dropped a few degrees under the canopy. I could hear birds. Somewhere off to my left, a woodpecker was hammering away at something. Everything felt exactly the way it always did. I walked for maybe 10 minutes, and then I saw something that made me stop. There was a trail to my right. Now I know every trail in those woods. I had walked them hundreds of times. I could close my eyes and draw a map. And I am telling you, there was no trail there. That specific spot, between a cluster of pine trees and a big mossy boulder I used to sit on as a kid. There was never a trail there, but there it was. It wasn't faint either. It wasn't like something had just been made recently. It looked worn, like it had been used for a long time. The ground was packed flat, and the brush on either side was pushed back like people or something had been walking along it regularly. I stood there for a good 30 seconds just staring at it. My first thought was that they made a new trail. Maybe the parks department or something. But this wasn't a parks maintained area. This was just woods behind a neighborhood. Nobody built trails here. We just made our own over years of walking the same paths. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I was misremembering. Maybe I just never noticed it. I took one step onto it, and the woodpecker stopped. I don't know why that bothered me. Birds stop making noise all the time. But in the moment, in that specific beat of silence, it felt like the whole forest exhaled and held its breath. I took another step. The trail curved slightly to the right and went downhill into a part of the woods I didn't recognize. I could see maybe 40 feet ahead before it bent out of sight. The trees on either side were older, bigger trunks, darker bark. It was noticeably dimmer down there, even though the sun was still up. I kept walking, I'm not sure why. Looking back, I genuinely cannot explain it. Every instinct I had was telling me to turn around, to go back to my loop, to get home before dark. But there was something about that trail, something that felt almost like a pull, like the path itself wanted me on it. I followed it for maybe 5 minutes. That's when I heard the sound. It was rhythmic, slow, like footsteps, but not quite. The spacing was wrong, too far apart for a person walking normally. And it wasn't coming from behind me. It was coming from ahead. Around that bend I couldn't see past. I stopped. The sound stopped too. I waited. I counted to 10 in my head. Nothing. I took one more step. The sound started again, closer now, and this time I could hear something else mixed into it. A low sound, almost like breathing, heavy and slow, like something very large catching its breath. I turned around and I ran. I don't mean I jogged or walked quickly. I mean I ran, full sprint, arms pumping, phone bouncing in my pocket, crashing through brush, because I wasn't even staying on the trail anymore. I just ran in the direction I thought was out. My water bottle fell somewhere and I didn't stop. I ran until I burst out of the tree line into the back of someone's yard, and I stood there with my hands on my knees, trying not to throw up. It took me a full minute before I realized I was standing in a yard 2 streets over from my house. I had come out of the woods in a completely different spot than where I went in. I told myself I had panicked, that it was an animal, a deer, a bear, maybe, though I'd never seen one in those woods. I told myself the trail had probably always been there, and I just never noticed. But here's the thing that I still can't explain. The next morning, I went back with my friend